Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Nazir. We are up to Perikei Mishnah Vav. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Ranbai V'Eliyahu ben Burcha Yisrael of Chana bet Miriam and Sason ben Raya Menuchatam beGan Eden Amen and Avdi ben Chaim L'Chaim v'Lerefuah Shelemav Daniel Shalom ben Roza Betoch Shah Cholei Yisrael. This Mishnah continues dealing with the case discussed in the previous Mishnah. Just to recap, the Mishnah discussed 6 people who were walking on the road and someone was coming toward them from the other direction, but they cannot see him clearly. One of the 6, thinking that he recognized the person coming toward them, said, I am hereby a Nazir if that person is so-and-so. Another one of the 6 who disagreed with the first one said, I am hereby a Nazir if that person coming toward us is not so-and-so. So we learned, Bet Hillel taught that if the man walking towards them turns out to be so-and-so, the first person is a Nazir, and if he is not, the second person is a Nazir. Now the Mishnah discusses what the law is if they never find out who the man was. Now this question is relevant only according to Bet Hillel. According to Bet Shammai, it does not matter who the man was, because their vows take effect even if they were wrong. According to Rabbi Talfun in the previous Mishnah, it also does not matter, since their vows do not take effect even if they were right, because they did not know who the man was at the time they made their vows. So the Mishnah begins, Sirtia la'achorav, if the man coming toward them suddenly turned around and walked back so they never saw who he was, and no Nazir, neither of the first 2 people is a Nazir, although one of them was certainly correct, each one meant to take his vow, make his vow only on the assumption that he would be proven right. He did not mean for his vow to take effect if the truth would never be known. As a rule, we assume that a person wants his vow to take effect only if it means that he will be a definite Nazir, not if it will lead to a situation if he cannot be sure if he is a Nazir. Therefore, when someone makes a vow, it is as though he says, if it will turn out that we cannot say for certain whether I must keep the vow, then I do not mean to make the vow at all. So for this reason, even though one of these people was right, neither one of them is a Nazir. Therefore, like we said again, neither of the 2 people is a Nazir. And for this reason, if you go back to yesterday's Mishnah, when we had 4 other people who made stipulations, the last 4 people are not Nazirim either, since they vowed to become Nazirim only if one or both of the first 2 people became a Nazir. And here in our case, the man who was coming toward them turned around and they never saw who he was. Now Rabbi Shimon disagrees. Rabbi Shimon says, they are all Nazirim out of doubt. Rabbi Shimon disagrees with the previous Tana. He holds that when a person makes a vow of Nazirut, it does not automatically mean to exclude any cases that leave him in doubt. Therefore, all of these people are possibly Nazirim. However, since only a definite Nazir may perform the concluding rituals, they must each become a definite Nazir to be able to end their Nazirut. Now, only a definite Nazir can bring a Chatat offering as one of his concluding offerings, since a Chatat may be brought only when there is a clear obligation to do so. Also, only a definite Nazir can shave the hair of his head and not violate the prohibition on shaving the corners of the head. Therefore, Yomar, each one should say as follows, if it was as I said, then I'm already a Nazir because of my previous obligation, my vow. And if it is not as I said, and I'm not yet a Nazir, then I'm hereby a Nazir voluntarily. In this way, each one now is certainly a Nazir, either because of its original vow or because of his new one. And at the end of the Nazirut period, they will each be able to perform the concluding rituals. And the Rav tells us, the halakha does not follow the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. That is in a Mishnah Vav. Mishnah Zayin discusses another case in which 6 people make vows of Nazirut based on their thoughts about something they see. In this case, they see an animal known as a koi. The koi is an unusual creature, and the sages were unsure whether it should be halachically considered a domestic animal like a sheep or goat, a wild animal like a deer or gazelle, or whether it should be considered a category of its own. The Torah divides land animals into 2 categories: be'emah, domestic animals, species that are commonly raised by people, such as sheep, goats, and cattle, and chaya, wild animals, species that are not commonly raised, but are found in the wild, such as deer and gazelles. Now, certain Torah laws apply only to domestic animals and other only to wildlife. For instance, it is forbidden to eat certain fats, chalev, of kosher domestic animals, but not those of kosher wild animals, as the Mishnah tells us in Chulin, chapter 8, Mishnah 6. On the other hand, someone who slaughters a wild animal must cover its blood, what we call kisri adam, while someone who slaughters a domestic animal does not need to do so, as it says in Chulin, chapter 6, Mishnah 1. In our Mishnah's case, upon seeing a koi, 6 people made vows of Nazirut based on their opinions about what kind of animal they think it is. The Mishnah begins, Ra'at koi, if someone saw a koi, Va'amar harini nazir shezeh chaya, and said, I'm hereby a nazir if this is a wild animal, harini nazir shezeh no chaya, and a second person seeing the koi and thinking it should be considered a domestic animal said, I am hereby a nazir if this is not a wild animal, harini nazir shezeh be'ema, and a third person saw it and said, I am hereby a nazir if this is a domestic animal, harini nazir shenze be'ema, and a fourth person thinking it should be considered a wild animal said, I am hereby a nazir if this is not a domestic animal. So the first and fourth people both think it is considered a wild animal, and the second and third people both think it is considered a domestic animal. Fifth person said, I am hereby a nazir if this is both a wild animal and a domestic animal, meaning it is not classified by the Torah as a wild animal or a domestic animal, but as a category of its own, meaning a species that is neither definitely one nor the other. Since this category must be by definition treated with the stringency of both, this fifth person may be correct. Hareni Nazir Shenze lo chayav lo be'ema. The sixth person thinking that a koi is in a category by itself said, I am hereby a nazir if this is neither a wild animal nor a domestic animal, rather it is in a category of its own. Hareni Nazir shechan mikem nazir. A seventh person then came along and said to the first six, I am a nazir if at least one of you is a nazir. Hareni Nazir shenechan mikem nazir. And the eighth person said to the first six, I am hereby a nazir if at least one of you is not a nazir. Hareni Nazir shikulchem nazirim. And the ninth person said to the first six, I am hereby a nazir if all of you are nazirim. Hare kulam nazirim. The law is that all of them are nazirim. The first six people are nazirim because we do not know which of them is correct, since we do not know whether a koi is considered a wild animal or a domestic animal or in a category of its own. Therefore, as Rabbi Shimon taught in the previous Mishnah, all of them must keep the laws of nazirut out of doubt. Now, according to the Tanakama of the previous Mishnah, none of these people would be a nazir because they did not mean for their vows to take effect in cases where it is not certain they were nazirim. The last three people must also keep the laws of Nazirut out of doubt, again, because we do not know exactly what they mean to say. The seventh person might mean to say, I am a Nazir if one of you is the full-fledged Nazir, in which case he is a Nazir, since it is true that one of them made a correct statement about a koi. However, he might mean to say, I am a Nazir if one of you can say that you are definitely a Nazir. In that case, he is not a Nazir, since none of them can know for certain. Similarly, the eighth one might mean to say, I am a Nazir if one of you is not a Nazir, in which case he is a Nazir, since it is true that one of them made an incorrect statement. However, he might mean to say, I am a Nazir if one of you can say that you are definitely not a Nazir, in which case he is not a Nazir, since none of them can know for certain who was correct. The ninth one might mean to say, I am a Nazir if all of you must keep the laws of a Nazir out of doubt, in which case he is a Nazir. Or he might mean to say, I am a Nazir if you can all say for sure that you are Nazirim, in which case he is not a Nazir. And that is an abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.